All right, let's bring in Sky News host now, James Morrow. James, thanks for your time. Look, as I just spoke about, all the living prime ministers, except for Paul Keating, have signed a statement condemning Hamas very clearly. Why can't Anthony Albanese and Penny Wong show the sort of leadership that these former prime ministers have shown in a beautifully worded two-page statement?
Yeah, well, look, Sharri, I mean, I think the answer to that is fairly obvious, and it has to do with the internal politics of the Labour Party. A couple of issues. Number one, the demographics of a number of Labour seats in places like Western Sydney are very sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, if not the Hamas cause. Number two, Labour is being attacked on its left flank by the Greens, which are very much virulently anti-Israel and pro-Palestinian. But, you know, to take up the theme of your editorial here, Sharri, I get concerned even by that letter, which was very eloquent by the 6 former prime ministers, that I don't think we have fully enough moral clarity about the fact that Israel is in a war here with the Hamas leadership, and also potentially with Hezbollah, and certainly with, you know, potentially Iran, which backs both of those organizations. And war is an unpleasant thing; it's a brutal thing, but Hamas, not Israel, is responsible when these civilians die. You know, they have it in their power to give up their leadership. They have it in their power to give up and give back the hostages that they are holding. You know, what we are hearing from so many people right now is just the height of hypocrisy. After Pearl Harbor, you didn't hear people say, oh, you know, we've got to hold a ceasefire here because, you know, Japan, you know, look, they had a few issues about American sanctions in the Pacific and oil sales and all of that. I mean, this is Israel being treated and held to a standard which I don't think really any other nation is. And, you know, if you look at the way Palestinian refugees have been treated by countries like Syria, you know, where they've been murdered wholesale, you do not hear, you know, the same people running out with Palestinian flags protesting the Assad regime, just the opposite. So there's a real lack of moral clarity here. And I think people are just going to have to be very tough about the fact that Israel is going to have to do things that are going to be very unpleasant. But you know what? That is what war is about. And Hamas brought this on themselves and their people, not Israel. Exactly.
James, Albanese will arrive in China on Saturday, a 3-day trip. This has been a long time in the making. Hong Kong human rights groups are now asking the Prime Minister to use this trip to advocate for the freedom of some of the detained pro-democracy activists. We still have another Australian in prison in China as well. What do you think? Do you think Albanese is going to be at all tough on this trip, or is this just about mending relations?
I think it's more about mending relations, getting good optics out of it, and dialing down the temperature in the headlines. You know, he has, and I give him complete credit, and Penny Wong full credit for getting Cheng Lei released, and that's a great thing. But there's Yang Hangjun, who's still being held by the Chinese. There's Hong Kong democracy activists, you know, the human rights violations we know all about in China. But beyond that, you know, there's all of their military saber rattling and everything else. I just worry that with some of the public statements we see from this government, which is contrasting them to the Morrison government on China and how relations are, I feel like they're looking for good headlines, but not necessarily great strategic outcomes.
Yeah. Now, James, you've written an exclusive for the Daily Telegraph where you reveal that we've had record numbers of migration this year, in the first 7 months of this year, 350,000 people arriving between January and August. What do you think? Is this the right approach for the economy during a cost of living crisis?
Well, no, absolutely not. And we can see it in the numbers. You know, population growth is the only thing keeping overall GDP afloat. But you look at GDP per person, we're going backwards, which shows we've got a productivity crisis, that we've got an economy that's being propped up by migrants coming in, the demand. So then you've got the RBA saying, oh, look, you know, there's all this demand in the economy. Where's that coming from? It's not coming from us as individuals. It's coming from the growing population, which then puts greater pressure on interest rates, or puts pressure on the RBA to raise those interest rates. You know, I'm concerned that there's a lot of this that hasn't been fully examined, particularly the huge student migrant intake, which is huge, massive, and it's going to eat up most of the new houses that are built, new units and so on that are built over the next several years. And I don't think Jim Chalmers and Anthony Albanese and the others really have a good answer on this one.
All right, James Morrow, thank you so much for your time. We'll read you in the Daily Telegraph and see you on air for the US report on Friday. Thank you so much.